The silver ships came from beyond the stars on a quiet Tuesday morning. Commander Tal stood on the bridge of his vessel, watching the blue and green planet grow larger through the viewing screen. His long fingers touched the control panel as he studied the world below. Earth looked peaceful from space, with white clouds drifting over vast oceans and brown continents. "Commander, we are receiving signals from the surface," said his science officer Keth. The young alien's skin had a soft purple glow, and his large eyes reflected the light from the screens around them. "The humans are trying to communicate with." Yes, Tal nodded slowly. For 50 years, the Viridian Empire had been listening to radio signals from this small planet. The messages spoke of a species that seemed much like other primitive civilizations they had encountered. Wars existed, but they appeared to be small conflicts over resources. The humans had basic technology and had just begun to explore their own solar system. "Open a channel," Tal commanded. "Let us make first contact according to protocol." The screen flickered and showed a human face. The creature had dark skin and short black hair. Two small eyes sat above a flat nose, and a thin line of a mouth moved as it spoke. "This is Captain David Cross of the Earth Defense Force. We welcome you to our solar system. We come in peace and hope to learn from your advanced civilization." Tal smiled, showing his sharp white teeth. The human seemed friendly and eager to please. This was going exactly as expected. Most primitive species reacted this way when they first encountered the Galactic Council. They were grateful for the chance to join the larger community of worlds. "Greetings. Captain Cross, I am Commander Tal of the Viridian Empire. We represent the Galactic Council, a peaceful alliance of over 300 worlds. We have come to offer your species membership in our community." The human's face showed excitement. "That is wonderful news, Commander. We have dreamed of this day for generations. What do we need to do to join your alliance?" Tal consulted the datapad beside him. Earth had been classified as a Class 5 death world, meaning it was extremely dangerous for most galactic species. The gravity was too strong, the atmosphere too thick, and the weather too violent. Most concerning were the massive storms, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions that regularly devastated the surface. "First, we must relocate your population to safer worlds," Tal explained. "Your planet is far too dangerous for long-term habitation. We have prepared several worlds with controlled environments where your species can live in peace and safety." The human's expression changed slightly. Something flickered in those small eyes that Tal could not identify. "We appreciate the offer, Commander, but we prefer to remain on Earth. This is our home." Tal felt confused. No species had ever refused relocation from a death world before. "Captain, you must understand the dangers. Your planet experiences natural disasters that could wipe out entire cities. Your star produces radiation that causes cancer. Your atmosphere contains gases that are toxic to most life forms." Captain Cross nodded. "Yes, we understand all of that. But this is where we belong. We have lived here for millions of years and have adapted to these conditions. We would rather work with you while remaining on our homeworld." The conversation continued for several hours. The humans were polite but firm in their refusal to abandon Earth. They offered to establish colonies on other worlds but insisted that Earth would remain their primary home. This was unprecedented in Tal's experience. Later that day, Tal met with his senior officers in the ship's conference room. The walls were lined with soft glowing panels that provided gentle light. The air smelled of the flowering plants that grew in containers around the room. "I do not understand their reasoning," said Keth. "Every scan shows that their world is actively trying to kill them. The weather alone should make the planet uninhabitable." Medical Officer Nara spoke up. Her voice was soft and musical, like all members of her species. "I have been studying their biological data. These humans are remarkably fragile. Their lifespans are incredibly short, less than 100 years. Their bodies are weak and break easily. They require constant food and water to survive. Yet they refuse to leave their dangerous world," Tal mused. "Perhaps they do not fully understand what we are offering them." "There's something else," Keth added, his purple skin darkening with concern. "I have been monitoring their communications. They speak of their planet as if it were a living thing that they love. They use words like beautiful and home when describing landscapes that would terrify most species." Tal leaned back in his chair. In all his years of first contact missions, he had never encountered a species that chose to remain on a death world when offered safer alternatives. Most primitive civilizations were eager to escape their dangerous environments. Perhaps they simply need time to understand, he decided. We will proceed with standard cultural exchange protocols. Once they see what we can offer them, they will surely reconsider. The next few days passed peacefully. Human delegations visited the alien ships, marveling at the advanced technology. The humans seemed genuinely impressed by the Viridian systems for controlling weather, preventing disease, and maintaining perfect environmental conditions, but still they insisted on returning to their dangerous world each night. Tal watched from his viewing screen as the human shuttles descended through Earth's thick atmosphere. Lightning flashed in the distance as a storm system moved across one of the continents. The sight made him shiver with instinctive fear. "Commander," Keth said quietly, "I am beginning to think we may have made an error in our classification of this species." "What do you mean?" Perhaps they are not as primitive as we believed. Any species that can survive on a world like that for millions of years might be far more advanced than we initially thought." Tal considered this possibility. The humans had seemed so fragile and weak during their first meetings. But perhaps that was deceptive. Perhaps there was more to them than met the eye. "Continue monitoring their communications," he ordered, "and prepare detailed scans of their cities and settlements. I want to understand how they have managed to survive on this world for so long." As the alien ship settled into orbit around Earth, neither Tal nor his crew realized that they were about to discover something that would forever change their understanding of what it meant to be a predator in the galaxy. 3 weeks after first contact, Commander Tal watched the viewing screen with growing unease. The human research team was working in what they called Antarctica, a frozen continent at the bottom of their world. The temperature readings made no sense to him. The instruments showed numbers that should have meant instant death for any living creature. "Keth, check the sensors again," Tal commanded. "These readings cannot be correct." The science officer's purple skin had turned almost white with shock. "I have checked them 5 times, Commander. The temperature is minus 40 degrees. The wind is moving at 100 kilometers per hour. The humans are working in conditions that would kill a Viridian in less than 2 minutes." On the screen, Dr. Emma Wells directed her team as they set up equipment in the howling blizzard. The humans wore thick coverings over their bodies, but their faces were exposed to the brutal cold. Steam rose from their breath as they spoke to each other. They moved with purpose and efficiency as if the deadly conditions were nothing more than a mild inconvenience. "Look at them," whispered Medical Officer Nara. "They are not just surviving in those conditions. They are thriving. They are working and thinking and solving problems while their world tries to freeze them to death." Tal felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on the screen. How is this possible? Our medical scans showed that humans are fragile creatures. Perhaps our scans were incomplete, Keth suggested. I have been studying their historical records, Commander. What we are seeing is not unusual for this species. They regularly expose themselves to conditions that would be considered weapons of mass destruction on most worlds. The alien officers watched as Dr. Wells removed her thick gloves to operate delicate instruments with her bare hands. The exposed skin turned red in the cold, but she continued working for several minutes before putting the gloves back on. I do not understand, Nara said. Why would they choose to work in such conditions? Why not wait for better weather? I do not think they have better weather, Keth replied quietly. I have been monitoring their weather patterns for weeks. This planet experiences constant disasters. Storms that would destroy our cities pass by, and humans simply continue with their daily activities. Tal pulled up additional data on his screen. The records showed human settlements in deserts where the temperature reached levels that would melt most organic compounds. Other cities existed in regions where the ground regularly shook with earthquakes that could topple buildings. Some humans even lived on the slopes of mountains that regularly exploded with liquid rock. "This makes no sense," he muttered. "Why would an intelligent species choose to live in such places?" "Perhaps they have no choice," Nara suggested. "Perhaps. They are trapped on this world and cannot escape these conditions," but Keth shook his head. "No, that is not correct. I have been studying their transportation systems. They can travel anywhere on their planet within hours. They choose to live in these dangerous places." The conversation was interrupted by an alarm from the communications station. "Commander, we are receiving a distress signal from the human." "Research team," Tal's blood ran cold. "Prepare the rescue shuttles immediately. We cannot allow them to die because of our failure to understand their limitations." "Wait," Keth said, studying his instruments. "The signal is not requesting rescue. They are reporting that one of their team members has fallen through the ice into the water below." The aliens watched in horror as the screen showed a human being pulled from water that was so cold it should have killed him instantly. The man was conscious and speaking, though his body was shaking violently. "He will be dead within minutes," Nara said with certainty. "No living thing can survive immersion in water at that temperature." But the humans simply wrapped their companion in heated blankets and gave him warm liquids to drink. Within an hour, he was back on his feet and helping with the research. The aliens could only stare in stunned silence. "Keth," Tal said slowly, "I want you to research human evolution. Find out how they developed these abilities." What Keth discovered over the following days shook the entire crew to their core. Humans had not evolved on a peaceful world like most galactic species. They had been forged in the fires of constant disaster and threat. Their planet had tried to kill them with ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and deadly plagues. Each time, instead of dying out, humans had adapted and grown stronger. "Commander," Keth reported, "their species has survived at least 5 major extinction events. Each time, most life on their planet died, but humans found a way to continue. They have lived through periods when their world was covered in ice, when massive rocks fell from space, when poisonous gases filled their atmosphere. How did they survive such things? They learned to eat almost anything. They developed the ability to live in any environment. They created tools and weapons to protect themselves. But most importantly, they learned to work together when faced with threats." Tal reviewed the data with growing amazement. Humans could survive on a diet that would poison most species. They could function in gravitational fields that would crush other life forms. They could heal from injuries that would be fatal to more advanced species. "There is something else," Keth added reluctantly. "I have been studying their entertainment and literature. They create stories about surviving in dangerous conditions. They consider it recreation to climb mountains, swim in frozen water, and run for hours across burning deserts." "Recreation?" Nara asked in disbelief. "They do these things for fun?" "Yes, they call it sport. They compete to see who can endure the most extreme conditions. They push themselves to the limits of survival simply for the pleasure of proving they can do it." The revelation hit Tal like a physical blow. These humans were not the fragile primitives he had expected to rescue. They were something else entirely. They were survivors who had been tested by the harshest conditions imaginable and had not just endured but excelled. "Commander," Keth said quietly, "I believe we may have made a serious error in our assessment of this species. They do not need our protection. They may be the most resilient life forms in the galaxy." That night, Tal stood alone on the bridge, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The planet no longer looked peaceful to him. He could see the massive storm systems swirling across the continents, the lightning flashing in the darkness, the evidence of volcanic activity glowing on the night side, and somewhere down there, millions of humans were sleeping peacefully, safe in their homes, completely unafraid of the deadly world that surrounded them. For the first time in his career, Commander Tal began to wonder if perhaps the Viridians were the ones who needed protection. The invitation to observe human military exercises came as a routine part of the cultural exchange program. Commander Tal expected to see primitive weapons and basic tactics, much like the simple warfare his species had studied in their ancient history books. What he witnessed instead would haunt him for the rest of his life. Colonel Mike Torres stood in the center of the training ground, addressing a group of human soldiers. The aliens watched from their observation platform as the humans prepared for what they called a combat simulation. The soldiers moved with a fluid precision that seemed almost like a dance, each one checking weapons and equipment with practiced efficiency. "This should be interesting," Keth remarked. "Their weapons appear to be chemical projectile systems, very primitive compared to our energy weapons." Medical Officer Nara studied the humans through her scanner. Their physiology shows elevated stress responses, but they seem to be controlling their fear reactions. Remarkable discipline for such an emotional species. The exercise began with what the humans called a reconnaissance mission. The soldiers moved through a forest terrain, communicating with hand signals and maintaining positions that provided maximum coverage and protection. The aliens noted that the humans seemed to anticipate threats that did not exist, constantly watching for dangers that their sensors could not detect. Why are they so paranoid? Tal wondered aloud. This is clearly a safe training environment. Colonel. Torres heard the question through the communication link. Commander, in human military doctrine, there is no such thing as a safe environment. Every location is potentially hostile until proven otherwise. The statement sent a chill through the alien observers. They watched as the humans moved through the forest with the constant awareness of predators, their heads turning at every sound. Their weapons ready to fire at the first sign of threat, then the combat. Simulation began in earnest. What the aliens witnessed defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. The humans did not simply fight, they transformed. The careful, thinking creatures they had been talking to for weeks became something else entirely. They moved with deadly purpose, using tactics that combined brutality with surgical precision. Look. At their faces, Nara whispered, they are not afraid. They are eager, it was true. The humans engaged in mock combat with an enthusiasm that terrified the alien observers. They threw themselves into situations that should have triggered every survival instinct, seeking out danger instead of avoiding it. When one soldier was designated as wounded, his companions did not retreat to safety. Instead, they became more aggressive, fighting harder to protect their injured comrade. This is not normal behavior, Keth observed. Most intelligent species become more cautious when faced with casualties. These humans become more dangerous. The exercise continued for hours. The aliens watched humans fight in conditions that would have ended conflicts on any civilized world. They continued battling when exhausted, when injured, when outnumbered. They adapted their tactics constantly, learning from each encounter and becoming more effective with each engagement. Colonel Torres demonstrated close combat techniques that made the aliens recoil in horror. The humans had developed ways to kill, with their bare hands, using their own bodies as weapons. They had created hundreds of different ways to end a life, each one more efficient than the last. Colonel, Tal asked during a break in the exercise, why do you train for so many different types of combat? Surely modern warfare is conducted with advanced weapons at long range. Torres smiled, and for the first time, the aliens saw something predatory in that expression. Commander, warfare is not about weapons. It is about the will to win. A human warrior must be prepared to fight in any environment with any weapon against any enemy. We train for everything because we never know what we might face. But surely, you prefer to avoid conflict when possible? The colonel's smile widened. Of course we prefer peace, but we prepare for war. There is an old human saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. We have learned that the best way to avoid fighting is to be so good at it that your enemies choose not to test you. The aliens learned that humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. While most species had evolved beyond warfare after developing advanced technology, humans had simply become better at it. They had studied conflict like a science, developing strategies and tactics that exploited every weakness in their opponents. "How many wars has your species fought?" Nara asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. "We have never stopped fighting wars," Torres replied matter-of-factly. "At any given time, there are dozens of conflicts happening across our planet. We have developed the art of warfare to a level that your species cannot comprehend." The aliens discovered that human history was a continuous story of conflict, conquest, and survival. They had fought with clubs and stones, with swords and spears, with guns and bombs, and now with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Through it all, they had never lost their fundamental nature as warriors. "But why?" Tal asked. "Why do you continue to fight each other when you could work together?" "We do work together," Torres explained, "but we also compete. Competition makes us stronger. Conflict teaches us lessons that peace cannot. Every war we fight makes us better at surviving the next one." The final exercise of the day was a simulation of urban warfare. The aliens watched as humans practiced fighting in their own cities, using tactics designed to protect civilians while eliminating threats. The level of precision required was staggering. The humans had to identify targets, assess collateral damage, and execute strikes with surgical accuracy, all while under enemy fire. "This is what terrifies me," Keth said quietly to his companions. "They are not just warriors, they are thinking warriors. They combine intelligence with aggression in ways that should be impossible." The simulation ended with the humans successfully completing their mission with minimal casualties. As they cleaned their weapons and discussed their performance, the aliens realized something that made their blood run cold. The humans had enjoyed it. They talked about the combat simulation with the same enthusiasm that other species reserved for art or music. They analyzed their tactics, discussed improvements, and planned for more advanced scenarios. Fighting was not just something they could do, it was something they loved to do. "Colonel," Tal said as they prepared to leave, "I must ask you something. Are humans naturally aggressive, or is this behavior learned?" Torres considered the question for a long moment. "Commander, we are persistence hunters. Our ancestors survived by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We evolved to never give up, never stop fighting, never accept defeat. This is not something we learned. This is what we are." That night, as the alien ship orbited Earth, Tal called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. The conference room felt smaller than usual, as if the walls were closing in on them. "We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately," he announced. "We have made a serious error in our assessment of this species." "What kind of error?" asked Nara. "We assumed they were primitives who needed our protection. We were wrong. They are not primitives. They are apex predators who have been disguising themselves as prey." The implications were staggering. If humans could fight like this against their own species, what would they do to aliens who threatened them? The galaxy had never encountered a species that treated warfare as both art and science. "Commander," Keth said slowly, "what do we do with this information?" Tal looked out at the blue and green planet below, where millions of these warrior philosophers slept peacefully in their beds, dreaming perhaps of battles yet to come. "We pray," he said, "that they continue to consider us friends." The distress signal reached the Galactic Council chambers on a quiet morning, shattering the peace that had existed for over 2 centuries. The Ravagers had returned, and this time they brought a fleet large enough to threaten the entire outer rim of civilized space. Commander Tal stood in the emergency session, watching as holographic displays showed the extent of the threat. The Ravagers were a species that had terrorized the galaxy for generations before finally being driven to the edge of known space. Now they were back, stronger and more vicious than ever. "They have already destroyed 3 colonies," reported Council Leader Varen, her crystalline form flickering with distress. "The Kepler system has fallen, and they are moving toward the core worlds. We estimate they will reach the inner systems within 30 days. The assembled representatives of 300 worlds murmured in fear. The Ravagers were not like other hostile species. They did not conquer, they consumed. They took everything from a world and left nothing but ash and bones. "What are our options?" asked the delegate from the Centauri Federation. "The same as always," Varen replied with resignation. "We evacuate the threatened worlds and hope they lose interest before reaching the core systems. Our defense fleets are no match for their numbers." "What about the new species?" asked someone from the back of the chamber. "The humans, they have military capabilities we have never seen." Uncomfortable silence fell over the assembly. The reports from Commander Tal's mission had been classified at the highest levels, but rumors had spread throughout the council. Stories of a species that actually enjoyed warfare, that treated violence as an art form. "The humans are an unknown factor," Varen said carefully. "We do not know if they can be trusted with such a serious matter." "With respect, Council Leader," Tal interrupted, "I believe we have no choice. The Ravagers will destroy everything in their path. The humans are our only hope of stopping them." The debate continued for hours, but in the end, desperation won. The Council authorized contact with Earth's military commanders. Though they did so with deep reluctance and fear, General Patricia Hayes received the call in her office at the Pentagon. She listened to the alien request with the same calm expression she had worn through decades of military service. When the communication ended, she sat quietly for several minutes, processing the information. "So they want us to fight their war for them," she said to Colonel Torres, who had been present for the call. "It appears so, General. They seem to think we are their best option for dealing with this Ravager threat." Hayes pulled up the intelligence files on the Ravagers that the aliens had provided. The species was impressive in its brutality. They had evolved as parasites, moving from world to world and consuming entire civilizations. Their technology was advanced, their ships were numerous, and their tactics were ruthless. "What do you think, Colonel? Can we handle them?" Torres studied the data for a few moments. "General, these Ravagers are dangerous, but they have one critical weakness. They have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of." "And what are we capable of?" "We are capable of being the scariest thing in the galaxy, ma'am. We just need to show them what that means." Within 72 hours, the largest human military force ever assembled was heading toward the Outer Rim. The aliens watched in amazement as Earth's entire space fleet mobilized with efficiency that seemed impossible. Ships that had been in dock for maintenance were repaired and launched within hours. Soldiers who had been on leave reported for duty without being asked. But it was not just the speed of the human response that shocked the aliens, it was the attitude. "They're excited," Keth reported to Commander Tal. "I am monitoring their communications. And the humans are actually looking forward to this conflict. They see it as an opportunity to test themselves against a worthy opponent." Tal felt the familiar chill he had grown to associate with human behavior. "They are going to war against the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they are excited about it?" "Yes, Commander. They are treating this like their training exercises, but on a larger scale. They are eager to see how their tactics work against a real enemy." The human fleet reached the Outer Rim just as the Ravagers began their assault on the colony world of New Haven. The alien observers expected to see a conventional space battle, with ships firing at each other from long range until one side was destroyed. Instead, they witnessed something that would be studied in military academies. For generations, the humans did not engage in a fair fight. They studied the Ravagers for days, learning their patterns, their weaknesses, their behavior. They intercepted communications, analyzed ship movements, and built psychological profiles of their enemies. "They are not just fighting," Nara observed. "They are hunting," it was true. The humans approached warfare like persistence hunters, using their intelligence to set traps and ambush. They did not simply attack the Ravager fleet, they systematically dismantled it. General Hayes coordinated the assault from her flagship, watching as human forces used tactics that the Ravagers had never encountered. They attacked supply lines, disrupted communications, and targeted key ships with surgical precision. They turned the Ravager's own aggression against them, using their enemies' bloodlust to lure them into carefully prepared killing zones. The Ravagers are becoming confused, Torres reported. They are used to overwhelming their enemies with brute force, but our tactics are breaking their formations. Good, Hayes replied. Confusion leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to death. Keep the pressure on them. The aliens watched in horror as the humans demonstrated why they were the galaxy's apex predators. They did not just fight the Ravagers, they psychologically destroyed them. They studied their enemy's culture and used that knowledge to demoralize them. They broadcast messages that exploited Ravager fears and superstitions. They turned psychological warfare into a precise science. How do they know so much about Ravager psychology? Tal asked. They studied our historical records, Teth explained. But they also understand predator behavior because they are predators themselves. They know how to hunt because they are hunters. The battle for New Haven lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Ravager fleet was scattered and broken. Ships that had seemed invincible lay burning in space, their crews dead or fleeing. The humans had not just defeated the Ravagers, they had humiliated them, but the most terrifying moment came after the battle, when General Hayes opened a communication channel to the retreating Ravager ships. "This is General Hayes of the Terran Defense Force," she said in a voice that carried across the galaxy. "You came here to destroy and consume. You found predators instead. Remember this day and remember this lesson. Earth protects its allies. Attack any world under our protection, and we will hunt you to the end of the galaxy." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every species in known space would hear it. The galaxy had a new protector, and that protector was more dangerous than anything they had ever imagined. "Commander," Keth said quietly, "I believe we have awakened something that was better left sleeping." Tal nodded, watching as the human fleet began rescue operations for the survivors of New Haven. The same hands that had just delivered death with surgical precision were now offering aid and comfort to the wounded. "No," he said finally. "We have not awakened anything. We have simply discovered what was always there. The humans are not monsters because they choose to be. They are monsters because they have to be in a galaxy that would destroy the weak." The Ravagers would return to their hidden bases with stories of the new terror that had emerged from the unknown world. They would speak of ships that fought like living things, of tactics that seemed to read their minds, of enemies that hunted with the patience of gods and the fury of demons. And across the galaxy, other hostile species would hear these stories and begin to wonder if perhaps it was time to reconsider their aggressive plans. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it was learning to use its power. The surrender came on the 4th day after the Battle of New Haven, the Ravager fleet. Once the terror of the galaxy broadcast their defeat on all frequencies. Their message was simple and devastating. They yielded to the superior hunters from the world called Earth. Commander Tal stood on the bridge of his ship, watching as the broken remnants of the Ravager fleet drifted in space. The humans had not just defeated them, they had broken their will to fight. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was now begging for mercy. "What will the humans do to them?" asked Medical Officer Nara. "The Ravagers have destroyed so many worlds. Justice would demand their complete destruction." Tal was wondering the same thing. By galactic law, the Ravagers were war criminals who deserved death, their victims numbered in the billions. No species in the galaxy would object to their extermination. The answer came from General Hayes herself. She appeared on the communication screen, her face showing the exhaustion of battle, but also something else that the aliens could not identify. "This is General Hayes to all Ravager vessels. You have surrendered, and your surrender is accepted. You will be taken into custody and transported to secure facilities where you will be processed according to Terran military code. Any vessel that attempts to flee will be destroyed. Any vessel that complies will be treated according to the laws of war." Keth looked confused. "Laws of war? What does that mean?" "It means," said Colonel Torres, who had joined the communication, "that the Ravagers are now prisoners of war, and as such, they are entitled to certain protections under human military law." The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the humans began rescue operations. The same forces that had hunted the Ravagers across space were now pulling survivors from damaged ships and providing medical care to wounded enemies. "This makes no sense," Nara whispered. "Why are they helping the creatures they just defeated?" "Because," Tal said, beginning to understand, "they are not just predators. They are civilized predators." The full scope of human nature revealed itself over the following weeks. The Ravagers who had expected death found themselves in detention facilities that provided food, medical care, and safety. Human doctors treated wounded enemies with the same skill they used on their own soldiers. Human guards protected Ravager prisoners from revenge attacks by other species. "It is like they have two completely different natures," Keth observed. "In battle, they are the most terrifying creatures in the galaxy. In victory, they are almost gentle." The aliens learned that humans had developed complex rules for warfare over thousands of years. They had laws that protected prisoners, civilians, and non-combatants. They had codes of honor that governed behavior in battle. They had learned to be monsters when necessary, but they had also learned to be merciful when the fighting was done. General Hayes explained it during a conference with the Galactic Council. "The Ravagers are defeated. They no longer pose a threat. To kill them now would serve no purpose except revenge, and revenge is not justice." "But they are responsible for the deaths of billions," protested Council Leader Varen. "Surely they deserve punishment. They will be punished," Hayes replied. "They will be put to work rebuilding the worlds they destroyed. They will spend their lives making amends for their crimes. Death would be too easy for them." The aliens began to understand that human mercy was not weakness, it was another form of strength. The humans had the power to destroy their enemies completely, but they chose not to. They demonstrated that true power lay not in the ability to kill, but in the wisdom to know when killing was necessary and when it was not. This is what makes them truly dangerous, Tal realized. They are not driven by instinct or emotion. They choose when to be monsters and when to be merciful. They have complete control over their own nature. The reconstruction of the destroyed worlds began immediately. The humans organized the effort with the same efficiency they had shown in war. They brought in supplies, equipment, and personnel from across the galaxy. They turned the Ravagers from destroyers into builders, forcing them to create instead of consume. But the most remarkable thing was how the humans treated the refugees and survivors. They did not just provide aid, they provided hope. They showed the galaxy that destruction was not permanent, that worlds could be rebuilt, that life could continue after even the worst disasters. "Watch how they interact with the children," Nara pointed out. "The human soldiers are gentle with the young ones, even the Ravager young. They understand that the children are not responsible for their parents' crimes." It was true. The humans treated all young beings with careful kindness, regardless of species. They provided education, medical care, and protection to children who had been raised as future destroyers. They believed that any being could be taught to choose peace over violence. The transformation of the Ravagers took years, but the humans were patient. They understood that changing a culture of violence required time and consistent effort. They worked with Ravager leaders who were willing to embrace peace, and they isolated those who refused to change. How do they know which ones can be trusted? Tal asked during one of his regular visits to the reconstruction sites. "We study them," explained Dr. Anna Kim, the human psychologist in charge of the Rehabilitation program. "We look for signs of genuine remorse, willingness to change, and capacity for empathy. Most beings are capable of redemption if given the right guidance and opportunity." The aliens watched as former Ravager warriors learned to build instead of destroy. They saw creatures who had once been the terror of the galaxy working alongside their former victims to create new homes and communities. The transformation seemed impossible, but it was happening. They are rewriting the fundamental nature of an entire species, Keth observed. How is this possible? Because humans understand something that we do not, Tal replied. They know that true victory is not just defeating your enemy, it is turning your enemy into your ally. The change in the galaxy was remarkable. Word spread that the humans had not only defeated the Ravagers but had reformed them. Other hostile species began to reconsider their aggressive strategies. If the mighty Ravagers could be transformed from destroyers into builders, perhaps there was hope for peaceful solutions to other conflicts. The humans established what they called the Terran Peacekeeping Force, a military organization dedicated to protecting vulnerable worlds and preventing conflicts. But unlike traditional military forces, the TPF focused on rehabilitation rather than destruction. They became known throughout the galaxy as the species that could end wars not through conquest but through conversion. It is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed, admitted Council Leader Varen during a private meeting with Tal. They have the power to destroy us all, but instead they choose to protect us. How do we deal with beings who could be our masters but choose to be our guardians? The question haunted the Galactic Council. The humans had demonstrated that they were the most powerful military force in known space, but they used that power to maintain peace rather than establish dominance. They had become the galaxy's protectors by choice, not by conquest. Perhaps, Tal suggested, we learn from them. They have shown us that strength without wisdom is meaningless, and that true power comes from knowing when not to use it. The final proof of human nature came during the 5th anniversary of the Battle of New Haven. The humans organized a ceremony to commemorate not their victory, but the beginning of peace. Former Ravager leaders stood beside human officers, speaking about redemption and second chances. We were monsters, said Commander Corex, who had once led Ravager raids across 3 systems. The humans showed us that we could choose to be something else. They gave us the chance to become worthy of the lives we had taken. General Hayes spoke last at the ceremony. Today we remember not just a battle, but a choice. We could have chosen revenge, but we chose justice. We could have chosen fear, but we chose hope. We could have chosen to be monsters, but we chose to be human. The aliens in the audience understood finally what made humans truly dangerous. It was not their weapons or their tactics or their relentless nature. It was their ability to choose who they wanted to be in any given moment. They could be monsters when the galaxy needed monsters, and they could be merciful when the galaxy needed mercy. They are what we all should aspire to become, Nara whispered. They have mastered not just war, but themselves. As the ceremony ended, Tal looked around at the mixed crowd of humans, former Ravagers and representatives from hundreds of worlds. Children of different species played together while their parents discussed trade agreements and cultural exchanges. It was a scene that would have been impossible just 5 years earlier. The humans had not just won a war, they had changed the nature of the galaxy itself. They had shown that even the most violent beings could choose peace, that even the most bitter enemies could become allies, and that even the most terrifying monsters could choose to be merciful. Commander, Keth said as they prepared to leave, what do we tell the council about the humans? Tal considered the question for a long moment. We tell them the truth. We tell them that we have encountered the galaxy's apex predator, and that predator has chosen to be our protector. We tell them that we are safe not because the humans are weak, but because they are strong enough to choose kindness over cruelty. And what if they change their minds? What if they decide to conquer instead of protect? Tal looked back at the celebration, where General Hayes was laughing with a group of former Ravager children who were showing her drawings they had made. Then the galaxy will learn what it truly means to face monsters, but I do not think that will happen. The humans have shown us their true nature, and that nature chooses light over darkness, hope over despair, and mercy over vengeance. As the alien ships departed from New Haven, they carried with them the knowledge that would reshape galactic civilization. The age of conquest was over. The age of redemption had begun. And it was all because a species of beautiful monsters had chosen. to use their terrible power to heal instead of harm. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in eons, that was a good thing.